we have the honor of having a conversation with two of Baltimore's brightest entrepreneurs, really killing the game, and they're also a couple as well. So this is going to be a very dope conversation about business, about family, about how to balance that, and really growing different verticals, something that I think any entrepreneur needs to learn. You can't rely just on one stream of income. That's extremely important. And you guys have built a very impressive portfolio for being here and joining us in this conversation. We'll go over, but first and foremost, thank you for being here and joining us in this conversation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it means a lot, right? We talk about going back and giving back. The fact that we're here in Morgan, the fact that you're alumni from Morgan, the fact that you got some business skills from here, it means that much more that you're coming back and giving to the community that helped you with some of your. So clap it up for Chris for being back in the building.
Thank you.
So I wanna just go over some companies that you guys have. So you have BTST Services, which is a mental health company, right? You have Selfish, which is a beauty spa and event space. You have Carpe Diem, which is a management company that supports startups and small businesses. You have Outcrowd Restaurant Group, which is a company that develops and manages a chain of food and beverage and entertainment venues. You have Black Swan, a restaurant in Baltimore that's part of the group. You have Simon Enterprises, an investment firm with business holdings in Carpe Diem, BTSD, and all of the other companies that you have. And then you also have the BTST Cares, which is a nonprofit organization that serves poverty-stricken individuals in the DMV area. So did I leave anything out?
Maybe like 10.
Who's counting?
Nah.
Who's counting?
So extremely impressive portfolio. We'll talk about each one of them individually, but just before we start, all of those businesses doing well. Was this your plan from the beginning? Did you guys know that you were going to be successful entrepreneurs? Did you know that you was going to have multiple businesses up and running?
I wanted to do something, and I knew I wanted to have impact. Would I think that, we've been this diversified and this successful in operating these businesses? I would say no. We've been blessed to reach some phenomenal heights. And when I first started out, I probably only wanted to achieve a fraction of this. I think she saw more in me at the time than I did and saw more for us as well. So, I think one thing leads to the next. So I didn't go into it saying, hey, this is exactly what we want to do. This is how we want to create these businesses. This is what we want our portfolio to look like. I think just continue to just connect yourselves with great individuals, put yourself in the right realms. I saw a video the other day where you was talking about exposure. And I think exposure, has been great for me, and for us continuing to, when you're around certain things, now you can begin to normalize it. You can normalize it to know that you can achieve it. Like Black Swan, a lot of people I know, a few guys I know tried to had restaurants before, and I'm like, oh, this dude looks like me. He can do this. I know I can do this. Not from a cocky perspective. I just I know I'm smart like he is or whatever else. And just people who throw on events and stuff like that. And we was just talking with her dad. It's not just the exposure from the perspective of, hey, I can achieve this, but the exposure that now you know how to move in those realms when you're there, right? You learn to get comfortable. You learn what the conversations are. You learn how people live and how they structure their lives and stuff like that. So I think just exposure helped create opportunities for us and kind of let us know what was possible. And then I think things just continue to happen from there. Would you say so?
You said something very important. You said Janeen saw something in you that you didn't from the beginning, before all some of those characteristics that you saw from the beginning, before all the success, during the T-shirt day. What did you see in them? And I guess vice versa, what you see in her and say, this is going to be somebody that I can spend my life with, but this is also somebody that I can actually build business with.
So let me start.
You can share. You can start at my incredible looks.
Oh, yes, of course. My answer is totally different than his. I did not aspire to be an entrepreneur. I was not that kid I want to own a business. No. I thought I was going to go to college, get a degree, and get a 9 to 5. That was going to be my life. I was okay with it, and that was all I saw. But it wasn't until we met that I realized that he had a level of freedom that I didn't have. So I got up, I went to work every day, I'm slaving away at a desk, and he would call me from a golf course. So
That'll do it.
it created a level of envy. It really did. And eventually, over the years, I left and came on board with him. But he also was one of the hardest working people that I had ever met. So that was what I saw. Regardless if it was a small business, a medium-sized business, whatever it was, he would get up every day and go for it. And that was kind of what I saw, I understood that he had a gift, and I could trust that the businesses he was starting were going to be successful.
That's sweet. You should say this every day.
So, Chris, let me ask you this. We're at Morgan State, so
Can I tell what I said?
Yeah,
Or I didn't want it to be one-sided. I guess with her, when we were brought up completely like two different ways, but similar but two different ways. And so, the way that she sees the world sometimes is opposed. It used to oppose sometimes the way I see the world. And some people can look at that and see like, oh, that's just great opposition. Like there's great value in the way that she sees things the same. We don't see eye to eye. But there's great value in the way that she sees the world. I may be a little bit more risky. She may be a little bit more conservative. And she kind of helps balance out that risk exposure, right? But even outside of that, she saw like that with the healthcare company. She was like, I only provided one small service of the total portfolio of the total company that we provide now. And for years, she was like, you should just go ahead and have your own clinic. You should do this. Why are you waiting on them for a referral? And I was comfortable, and I'm like, because I like this, I do well at what we do, and she sees the world differently. So I admire that perspective in her and her structure and her order. Like you need somebody that can see the world differently and provide great balance for that. She was our first HR director, so when she left her job, I was upset that she said that she was. I was at work. I wanted to go on vacation, and she had to go work flex time and work extra hours. And I'm like, dude, this is killing our vacation. Like, you just need to leave. Like, let's go. You can come here. I have a bunch of files in this file room. Come organize these. And so the company began to grow, and you got HR, but it really doesn't work when your wife is HR of your company. Nobody really has a safe space. And not that they needed one, but I'm just saying nobody had a safe space to complain. And then she just continued to be a mom, and then started her own stuff. So I just love the way that, she sees it. It's frustrating at times, but I love the way that she sees the world differently than me.
So we at Morgan State. And I know that there's at least a few students here. So I want to ask this question. What are some important lessons you learned at Morgan State University's Graduate School of Social Work that you applied to BTST services?
Go Bears. First thing I learned is that it's this bridge at Morgan where everybody hangs out at, and you just can't stay there for too long, or you'll wind up doing an extra year of college like I did.
A couple extra years.
Who's counting? See, this is the world. I'm looking at it optimistically, and she's looking at it very rationally right now. When I was, so my undergrad was in business, and my graduate degree was in social work. So I was able to learn how to market, right? I had a few businesses before I came to Morgan. But I was able to take this understanding of how to market and brand and formalize it into constructural business terms. And then just understand how business operates on a macro level. And then you mix that with the understanding of psychology and social work, so you understand human behavior. So now you understand human behavior and you match that with marketing. Now you can create things that you understand how people respond to and what is their need. Their need is to be heard. Their need is to feel validated, to feel accepted, and all of these other things. So then you create concepts and experiences that, make people feel these ways. So that was one of the biggest things that I learned at Morgan. And yeah.
What are some of those, can you give an example of something, because you're right, as far as the psychology, a lot of times people don't think psychology and business go hand in hand. Even when I was learning business sales, I learned a lot of things about psychology and the art of selling to get people to buy into things. So anything in particular that stands out that you learned that you carried over to business?
I mean, I learned this before Morgan. I used to work at a telemarketing firm, MBNA, selling credit cards, and getting people give you a response. And so when people give you a response, they told you how to cushion it. So be like, hey, I understand what we later learn is validation or affirming. So you provide them that statement, and then you cushion it, and then you rebuttal. So you don't just take no for the answer. You're like, hey, I understand why you feel that way. However, so making sure, and just, you really don't take no for an answer in that type of environment. So that's something that sticks with me. I always tell my son, like, no is not a no. You just haven't said the right thing yet or met the right person for it to become a yes. So that kind of sticks out to me.
I'm thinking in the year's 2008, and you're going into the mental health field, not the most popular field. At the time, most people are probably thinking that this could be a lucrative field. Is the study of human behavior what made you feel so confident that this could be something, number one, that could change your community, and number two, we can build business around?
So I would like to say that, but I started BTSC before I went back and got my master's in social work. So I used to own a clothing store called C Note. And so it's an urban clothing store. We designed our stuff and we had a store for it. And, it's a sales-driven business. So the first set of sales, and we were working with limited capital. So the first set of sales we would put back into our re-up and you get a new merchandise. So I didn't get paid until like the third set of sales. And a lot of times those third set of sales never came. So I got a part-time job and I was working at group homes and I was working at overnight at just mentoring companies. So I kind of I got my experience in my end to social work and working in these type of organizations there. And from there, I just developed a love for passion for helping and just like helping improve these individuals' lives. But then I also saw a lot of the gaps in service delivery. And I was like, man, they're really doing these. We were just talking about this in the back. They weren't providing holistic, what we were just talking about this in the back. They weren't providing, teaching them about how to manage money and stuff like that and employment skills. So I wanted to build a program that embodied those different characteristics, and that's kind of how I got into it. And then when I went back to social, my master's degree, I didn't even want to go back for my master's. One of my buddies was like, yo, you're nothing without those letters behind your name. And I'm just being arrogant. I'm like, I do better than the teachers. What am I going to go back to school for or whatever? Just ignorance. And he was like, you're nothing without those letters behind your name. So I went back and got my license. And then doing that, I learned about that this isn't not just like a hustle. You're just not working with these individuals. You can really build a sustainable and scalable business and really have tremendous impact throughout the community.
So either one of you can answer this question. What's the business model for this? Like, how do you actually make money from mental health services?
I know you're not asking me. Don't look at me.
Well, you should know too because she actually worked in the billing department. It was just me and her billing.
I did.
We were a small business. When she had a baby, we were in the hospital billing and everything else like a few hours after she gave birth. So we definitely know how to build a part of it. But the way it's so you provide needed services. It's no different than you going to your doctor for a physical or you going to your your primary care or OBGYN, right? They've been able to, or a company like Casa Permanente, right? They just created an ecosystem where, hey, we provide services that consumers need, right? So we provide therapy, we provide these other support services, we provide psychiatry, medication management, and for that, insurance companies pay us, right? So it's I guess it's just scale, and we have the better that we are able to do, and we have several facilities throughout the state of Maryland, and we provide telehealth, so we service basically the entire state of Maryland. So I guess we've just been able to build a significant footprint that allow us to scale and just have a lot of individuals who patronize the business.
But I think you also left out, we started off with children, right? And we were treating children that had, I guess they were mild diagnosis, right? But we started realizing that the PTSD and the ADHD was starting deeper than within those children, but it was coming from the home. So then we decided to treat the parents. And so then we grew to servicing adults as well. And then from there, it was almost as if every time we grew, it was because of a need that the community had, not necessarily something that we saw.
Like you were talking about, just creating those verticals. So we have this example like Disney World, right? You go to Disney World, you typically stay in a Disney park, you eat at a Disney restaurant, you go to a Disney park, you buy Disney merch, all of that other stuff. They've created an entire ecosystem that wraps you up in Disney-related stuff. We want our client to come to us and get total care. So if you come for us for you were maybe just hyperactive in school, so hey, they refer to us for a diagnosis. Refer to us for an evaluation. We complete that evaluation, and from there we identify that they need therapy. And then from there, therapy is not enough to maintain. So we want to give them you want to engage the psychiatrist for medication management. And then we have support services associated with that. And then we have, SUD, because substance abuse is a major problem as well that runs concurrently with mental health. So we created this whole ecosystem of those things. And then some of the SUD clients also need places to live, so then you can create housing opportunities and stuff like that. So you just build a whole ecosystem. And it's not from like a capitalistic perspective, it's from a need perspective. And and mental health is that people run. And a lot of problem with social workers and mental health is that people do stuff because they love the work that they do, but then they don't have the business acumen behind it. So you get a lot of passionate people, and they would operate in a deficit if it was up to them, because they just love the work that they do. And my partner Jada always says that the two doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. You can do great work and be also run a successful business as well. So, that's kind of how our business model works.
Yeah, you brought up Disney, and part of our conversation backstage was, if you go to Disney World, the chance of you seeing Bob Iger probably slim, right? You're not going to see the CEO there. And a lot of times in our communities, when we create businesses, we create them because we like them, but we become employees to the business. So talk about scaling your business, but having systems in place that they can run where you don't have to necessarily be there every day on the clock.
So the term we coined is sustainable systems, right?
Sustainable, replicatable systems.
Sustainable and
Quote Jay
replicatable
McRae.
systems. And the reason why is because the goal is not to be a slave to your business. The goal is to be able to create the business, make it operable, hire people that can now run the business that you've created, and now you're able to move on to something else. If you're in there every day, it's hard to see it's hard for you to focus on everything that the business needs because you're in the middle of it, in the mud, doing it every day. You can't necessarily come up with the marketing plans or the business plan or learn how to grow the business if you're basically just operating it day to day. So what we like to do is create systems that we can now write up, train someone to do them, hand it off to them, and now they're able to go off and do that.
Well, even things that we don't have to write out. It's funny. Some people are like, Janeen, what do you do? Like, I don't want to work in the business. I don't want to. She's like, I invest. I don't want to work in the business. I don't want to be the chef. I don't want to be the GM. I'll invest in the business. I'll help with creative concept. I'll help get it there. We'll interview the correct people and put them in place. But the best thing you need to do is I don't want to create the policy. I don't have a formal background in each business that we own. You want to hire the individuals who have that knowledge, who are smarter than you. Create a team that people sometimes think that when you hire smarter people in these respective fields that they're competition, that you should be intimidated. It's like, no, I know what I want to create. Here's the vision. How do we do this? Let's bring this to market. How do we make this happen? How do we make this experience? And then we'll chime in high level about feedback and stuff like that of what we want to see from it. So she's a little bit more hands-off. I'm managing some of the managers at some point through like our KPI meetings or whatever else like that.
Just a quick follow-up. So when we're talking about scale, you said that you moved throughout the state. When do you know it's the appropriate time to now have multiple locations? Because that's something when we're in our business, it's like, yeah, we're doing great here, but we want to test the waters and see how far it reaches. How do you figure that part out?
I want to answer that by going back to the question that you asked at first. I think what we have to do as a community, we look at, hey, I'm a baker, so I want to start a bakery, right? We got to get used to owning businesses that we don't operate and that are in fields that we have no experience in, right? Because the goal isn't to be a slave to the business. You have the idea and you want to build it, and if it's just you, how many cakes can you bake? So how can you scale that, right? So what we've been able to do is it's been a blessing that we've been able to scale because the need calls us, right? So before we go open an office in a specific location, we've already have referral sources there. We've already been working in that area in some sort. So us opening an office is just a form to say is like we like to go with a demand being there. But what I like to say is like we like to go where the demand is and where the resources are. Like, because you can have a demand and then not have the staff. We had that in Cecil County. We had a great demand. People were saying, come out here. There's no other organizations out here. We're like, perfect. We got out there. The workforce wasn't there. So there was a reason why people weren't out there, right? So where the demand and where the resources intersect is where we like to be. But you have to create systems that are, and it's so funny that when my partner Jada, she had joined us when we were scaling the clinic, right? And she was like, I had pay disparities. Somebody in PG got paid this thing. Somebody in Baltimore got paid this thing. We had no vacation policy. The policy was just go whenever you want. Just don't be abusive or whatever else. She was like, no, we have to have the same policy everywhere. The people's role have to be the same. The pay has to be the same, everything. So that's creating a system, right? And then how do we manage these companies in other areas? We have to have touch points, right? We have to have dashboards and touch points. We have to have these different meetings that allow us to touch in, but without actually being there, you know? So, but in your payroll system, just different things like payroll, right? Making sure that people are put in the right way. Make sure that, how are we running payroll? Let's do it this way, whether this is a small business or whether this is a corporation, because we know we want to scale up to that. Like right now, Black Swan has more employees than it needs, and it has a very overwhelming management system. But we're not building this for one Black Swan. We're building this for 8 Black Swans. So it may seem OD to people who are in the restaurant industry now, but when we're 8 restaurants in, they'll already have their rhythm and we'll be able to run to the next thing.
So the healthcare business in America, as far as it's the largest business in America, as far as expenditures, federal government, I think it's like 35% of the budget. More money spent on healthcare than the military. And most people, when you think about healthcare, you think about, doctors and disease and surgery, but mental health is a very big part of it, and it's unfortunately getting bigger and bigger. So the business is actually a pretty brilliant idea, but it seems costly to start. What was the startup cost? And like for anybody that's looking to get into the space, what do they need? Like what certificates, what certifications, what do you need to actually get into the space that you guys are in?
So to your point, behavioral health is something that is growing substantially. It's a good and a bad thing. The need for behavioral health is growing, which is a sad thing because, people are dealing with a lot of traumas and a lot of disorders. And people have been dealing with these things previously. It's just that now they understand what they're dealing with. So imagine you've been struggling with something and there was no doctor, there was nobody that could speak to you about what you're going through. If I hurt my leg, I know I can go to an orthopedic or something like that and they could tell me what I'm going through, right? But I know I'm feeling fluttered and I'm feeling nervous and I don't, some people might not know that label that as anxiety, right? I mean, obviously there's other diagnostic criteria associated with that, but so now it's great that the market is growing. There's awareness around that, and that there is even more of awareness growing, especially in the urban communities, because for years we've suffered in silence, right? We've dealt with trauma from murders and all this other stuff. We suffered in silence, but now there's an awareness growing for it, and there's a market firms like for us. The big businesses are seeing this. Private equity firms like for us. Like our company was just acquired by a private equity firm, Webster Equity Partners. Thank you. And so they
2 people class.
Thank you. This is the first time we actually announced that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But we were acquired. I mean, we're still part owners in it as well. But they believed in what we are doing. Like these are bankers who have no aspiration to be service providers, but they know that this is a hot market right now. And what they saw in us was that, hey, you have this great platform, you built this great business. What do you need to continue to expand throughout Maryland, neighboring states across the country? One of the biggest things we need is access to capital. So now that Webster has a fund of almost $2 billion that they've raised that we have access to continue to do more of what we do, but then buy other companies throughout the state of Maryland, companies who are already existing, doing great work that, may be looking to expand, maybe looking for an exit strategy and stuff like that, or just who never thought about selling or stuff, because there's strength in numbers. And the best thing about M&A process, and especially when you roll equity in, is that I benefit from your success and you benefit from my success. So we want to continue to work together. So it's like, hey, 5 or 6 of us, we're doing well individually. I was watching Mike Krzyzewski. He was saying, if you punch somebody like this, it doesn't hurt, right? You'll wind up hurting yourself. But if you punch somebody like this with 5 fingers put together, you're going to have more of an impact. So just think about the amount of impact that we can have in these communities if we can come together and form these bigger organizations. But if you're looking to get started, obviously there's a totally different process than that. We're 15 years in. In Maryland, you got to go through like Maryland Medicaid. You got to be a Medicaid provider. You got to go through CARF, get your CARF accreditation. Like, this isn't just something where I wake up and say stuff like that, right? Or Big Brother program. I want to work with adults. I want to, they have YMCAs for stuff like that, right? Or Big Brother programs. We're treating people's mental health. So this is a very serious thing. I see some programs, people are just like, playing basketball. And if there's a treatment model associated with that, then that's perfect, But some people are just doing other things that aren't really clinically sound. So when people are getting into this, you have to first make sure that you're getting into this from a clinically sound perspective. As it relates to startup costs, if you're starting a PRP, if you're starting a clinic, or you're starting a sub program, I'll give Janeen her credit this. I had BTST, we were a mentoring program. We were trying to get into becoming a Medicaid provider and providing more services. And I had contracts that weren't paying me. I wasn't keeping proper AR reports and stuff like this. I just knew they owed me money. And I needed to expand into this healthcare thing. And they needed, I can't remember how much, but Janeen liquidated her 401k. This is beautiful. She liquidated her.
I see a real one.
I almost got choked up just now, think about it. But she liquidated her 401k, gave me $11,000, and she was like, yo.
My parents don't know this. You just announced it to the world.
You say what?
My parents don't know that.
Oh, well, they should be happy.
It's been replenished. We replenished it.
So she was like one of my first, maybe only investor, in BTST. She invested 11 grand, got her, and this was within months of dating. So, I was real.
No, we were married. We were married, yes.
I don't remember that.
That was not-
I don't like
You
you
weren't
like
dating?
that.
no.
It might have, well, I think we were married, and she was at her job. She was like, yo, listen,
That's
I'll
a
give you
big
this
difference
money.
between months in dating and
That
marriage.
is a
Say,
big
I know.
difference.
She
I had you out
a
here
real
looking
one.
like Tinderless Swindler. Like I just finessed you.
2 days is all it took. New line.
Don't, yes.
Oh, you
Okay, by the way.
That's a new line.
Don't, yes.
Oh, you really love me?
If you really
love me?
love me,
Let me see that 401k.
liquidate your 401k.
Liquidate that for me real quick.
Show me
Yeah,
it's real.
That's not what happened. I would not recommend that to anyone's daughter.
But I
no.
know it was scary for you though, regardless of being married or not. It was scary, and she gave it to me, and we were now able to become. We had the capital. We had our capital that they needed to see, and then when we decided to advance to a clinic, that was a whole different story about how that needed to go. But I would say you can get in it pretty reasonably. $50,000 or less. Depending on the size of your program, how robust you're trying to be, or whatever. I would say that. But outside of that, one thing I would like for people to understand is that, it's good to use our own money, but if we can use other people's money, that is excellent. So if you can build lines of credit, work a great banking relationship with someone so that you can kind of expedite that growth. Because for years, we got our first line of credit in 2020, in the middle of a pandemic. I still don't know how we got a line of credit in the pandemic. Well, actually, I do know, because they changed healthcare providers and they owed us a lot of money. So we finally had an AR report. But there was months. When she had our son, we were growing our program. Another company tried to take us out. And so we had to start another office, and we had to come on Jay to join. And we literally went months without being paid. We made this total investment into the program. We drained our complete savings. We were getting there. We were getting, it was about to get bad, right? She was thinking like, yo, this might not have been the greatest decision now. But we went months without being paid. But if we had a line of credit, we could have still grow and not have to worry about not paying ourselves. So if the faster it is initially, working capital and stuff like that, the better it is initially.
Yeah, that Janine's having flashbacks. So, I mean, you went from one employee, and we talked about not becoming a slave to the business, to 300 employees. What's that? I mean, especially in our community, the retention process, right? We've talked about this, trying to hire the right people and trying to give back to the community and making sure that, you know, we're giving opportunities to people that look like us. What is that like for your business? Obviously, going from 1 to 300, the retention process.
It depends on which business we're speaking of, right?
Yeah.
Because what day-to-day looks like at BTST is completely different than what the day looks like at Selfish Beauty. Our employees, we try to keep happy by their commission, honestly. They're commission-based, and they are technically 1099 employees, so they like to feel like they're self-employed and they're not employees of us, when at the end of the day, they're still under the same umbrella. But we always treat everyone with respect. We try to be really nice. We know that the field that we're in, which is the beauty industry, you could go anywhere. You could work anywhere. You could go to a suite. You could leave us at any moment. So we try to create more of a family culture. We are all a big family. We look out for each other, and we know that, yeah, we could go anywhere else, but we're happy here. So that's kind of the culture that we create at Selfish, but BTST, I guess it's similar.
Why would we even say as selfish? It's different. It's tough still. Retention is tough because while the pandemic, you know, it put a lot of people out of work, but it also motivated and created a bunch of entrepreneurs at the same time, right? And definitely a lot of work from home people. Mm-hmm. It's hard to get people to come in the office. So retention, you got to be flexible, first of all, right? Yeah. Because some people just don't want to come back in. But in that entrepreneurship mentality, people are like, hey, I can be an entrepreneur. I've taken this and exaggerated it, right? People are like, hey, I can be an entrepreneur. I can be a nail tech. I can go open my own suite. You can, but can you generate your own referrals as well? Because what you try to do is take our clients and go open your own. That's not true entrepreneurship in this case.
And then they put CEO in front of their name.
Exactly. So retention is hard, especially when people have all of these options, which is great. Optionality is great. Entrepreneurship is great. Like we're preaching like, hey, you might not want to be a slave to that job, right? But it also creates a vulnerability in the market of like hiring and maintaining people. So what you have to do, like she was saying, is create a great environment where people feel valued, they feel respected, and that they feel compensated appropriately for their job, but they also believe in the mission and what you're doing, right? So a lot of the staff we have, they will run through a wall for BTST or even Black Swan, right? So they believe that Black Swan, we had people, you know, Black Swan was set up where it was just, hey, for everybody, right? And it was urban, but it was for everybody. I guess people thought Black Swan meant Black Swan, right? So they're like, yo, everybody that we hired was all black, right? I mean, all shades of black, all styles of black, everything, right? And so, but the reason why that was is because they believe like, yo, this is a black-owned restaurant in Harbor East. They embody in the culture. It's elevated. It's still sophisticated. I want to be a part of that. People like, man, there's 3 beautiful women that are running Selfish Beauty. They're cool. They're business women. They're successful. I want to be a part of that. I want to be in that environment. And the same thing with BTST. They believed in the work that we're doing and the commitment that we have to these communities, and they really want to be a part of that as well. But I would say you got to stay flexible and create these work environments. Okay, we know that that's the threat. So how do we create these work environments that make people feel as independent as possible, but still provide the guardrails and the support?
Selfish.
Institution.
So I want to talk about Selfish. Completely different business from mental health space, where you're in a beauty spa event space, right? So how does that idea come about? And was there any hesitation in doing too many different things at one time?
So let me start by, I guess, reverse engineering this. Before I left my job and went to BTST, I had done a multitude of things. I had worked in healthcare for a health insurance company. Then I left that and went to Social Security. I did work at Best Buy as well. Then I went to.
But I want to shout out for the Best Buy. She was working at the healthcare company at Best Buy and getting a graduate degree and being pregnant at the same time.
Yeah, I did it all at the same time. Thanks.
A lot of reward points for that.
But
And you made her cash out a 401k.
I know, right?
Yeah, man.
But
What kind of man are you?
what a
I saw
guy.
those multiple sources of income. I'm like, got her.
Got him.
But you talk about climbing the ladder. That was literally the definition of climbing the ladder. I was just doing whatever I could to get whatever experience I could. And at the time, honestly, when I was working for Blue Cross Blue Shield, they were paying for me to be in grad school. So it all just made sense. So needless to say, I picked up a lot of skill sets in each one of those jobs that I needed to further me on where I was going to ultimately end up. But I had no idea. I was just doing what I thought was best. So then you fast forward to me leaving Social Security and coming on to BTST. Well, the only reason why I knew how to do HR and human resources things was because when I worked at Care First, I was in marketing, but they also had me doing a lot of data entry things with people's information. And I kind of learned how to process it. So needless to say, I kind of just picked up all of it, and I continued to just add from the different careers that I had, and I continued to just add it to my resume. So now I'm at BTST, I'm doing HR, and clearly, like he said, you can't be the owner's wife and be HR. And then as we were growing, it was just too many employees for me to honestly handle. So once I had our second son, I just kind of took some time off. And during that time off, I was able to kind of like develop my own ideas and identity and things that I really liked for myself. And I realized that beauty was one of them. So I kind of reached out to two of my friends, and the three of us agreed that there was a need for more of the spa salon feel. A lot of people were going to suites, and that just wasn't what we grew up knowing, right? Like, we wanted a one-stop shop where you could come and get your nails done, get your lashes done, get a facial, get your hair done. You could do it all and in the same spot, but enjoy it while you were there. You can have a drink, you can do your work, you can literally make a day of it. And it's beautiful, yes. It has art installations, and it's a beautiful place. You come to come see it. But that was the actual main motivating driving force behind it, like wanting to create a place that we personally would have wanted to go to. And as far as knowing if we could do it, we had our doubts. We were definitely nervous. We were scared. We don't provide services at all, neither one of us. None of us. Like, we don't do hair, we don't do a nail, nothing. So it definitely was a matter of encouraging people to believe enough in us to work for us. And that probably was the most difficult part, but they did. And then once we hit the ground running, it kind of was a go from there. Now, we had a hiccup because we had only been open for 3 months and COVID hit. So then we had to close. But it ended up being a blessing for us because it gave us a chance to figure out our pivots. Things that may have not worked the first 3 months we were open, or and recalibrate and figure it out. And to change, now we had 6 months to sit back and recalibrate and figure it out. So then we opened up, and we reopened, and when we reopened, we had 0 staff. We had lost everyone because they got PPP loans, and they were doing nails, and God knows where at this point. And so we had to start all over again, but it just gave us more grind and grit, and we've kind of figured it out.
Chris, as I'm listening to the story of Selfish, I wrote down the quote, not only do we treat your exterior, but we feed your interior. And when I hear that, I think mental health, right? It's self-care, like that's part of mental health. And so as the idea is coming about and you're seeing it and you start the business, are you looking at this like this is another value add inside of the first system that I created?
Yeah, so I thought that investing in that business would be cheaper than her continuing to get these services a la carte elsewhere. And but it really wasn't. But no, so Selfish, like they were thinking about the name, it was like Selfish. And we were like Selfish, and I was like, yo, that's perfect. Like, because you need to own that it's okay to be selfish. That's one of the taglines, like it's okay. Like, women sometimes sacrifice themselves to give to everybody else. They put their mask on last on the plane and everything else like that, and never make time for themselves. So it's like, it's okay to be selfish. And then so while they were doing it, I'm like, we should add a mental health component to this, because we have this lounge in Selfish. So we started getting mental health professionals who did like something Tuesdays.
It was called self-care. I don't remember what it was called.
It was on a Tuesday.
We had to stop when COVID hit.
Yep. And people would come, and these women who came for all of this beauty stuff, it was like, yes, you're looking good on the outside, but how do we also treat that inside as well? And so people would come to these different panels and just hear these conversations and just leave fuller, inside and outside.
So, what's the locations all throughout that to have a chain of locations all throughout, America? Like, what's your vision for that?
Honestly, we would love to have more, and that is the goal, to open more in different locations in different states. But employing staffing is hard. It really is hard. And so while we're here and in Baltimore and we have a good thing going, we're kind of just trying to put all of our focus and emphasis into that one. And at some point, we'll open another location in another state. But when we feel like the time is right and when we feel like we have found the staff that we can hire, because clientele isn't really our issue. It's making sure that we have technicians that can service the clients. You were going to say something?
Well, to your point, like you asked, how do you know when you're ready to scale, right? You got to make sure you have those operating systems in place first, right? So if we know, hey, we're a little deficient in this area, our ordering is this, or our pay rates are this, or our turnover is this, we might not be ready to scale yet because we got to get this one together. Like, people love Black Swan. They were like, hey, you guys need to take Black Swan somewhere else. And I'm like, we're probably about 3 months out right now of where we need to be, finalizing our systems, looking at our financial reports, all of that other stuff, getting our labor costs down to be able to scale. So I think to Janeen's point, once they continue to tighten those screws, because people just want to run, and Instagram make people want to run because they want to be seen and give the appearance that they're doing something. But you need to make sure that when you have this foundation and that you have the footings, not just the foundation, because the footings go below the foundation, that you have these footings in place that allow you to build this, this high rise that you're attempting to build.
So, who's running the day-to-day operations of the spa?
Me.
That's a lie. I don't even know the last time he has stepped foot in the spa. Actually, the three of us split everything evenly, but anything as far as their license or HR, compliance, anything as far as their licensing or just managing the people, right? And then my partner Kelly is the money girl. She handles all of our bookkeeping and the I do payroll, but she like the register, and she also does a lot of our marketing. And then Keisha, who is our third partner, does like systems. She does ordering. She does our booking system. Anything that's like our computer data and everything else needs to be done. But the three of us have three very different skill sets, and it makes one collective perfect person. Like, if you could put the three of us into one person, we would be...
It's Voltron.
I think that's important what she's saying, and for everybody out there, is you can't be afraid of partnerships, right? A lot of people want to do it all on their own, or they get into partnerships, but the wrong partnerships. You got to get into partnerships where you guys benefit each other, where you're the yin to the other person's yang, right? Where, hey, I might be good at marketing, but somebody is better at operation. Or this person can do this and they can do this. Because the goal in partnership, whether it's marriage or anything else, is to lighten each other load, right?
Correct.
To make that so I can benefit from your skill set, you can benefit from my skill set, and you don't have to do everything. And when stuff hit the fan, we could do a capital raise together, and it's not all coming out of my pocket, right? So partnership, you're sharing the highs, you're sharing the lows, but you also work to reduce the burden. So partnership is a great thing.
Speaking of partnership, and being that you're inside of the mental health space with the spa, Selfish, and obviously with BTST, how do you ensure yours, right? Because you're adding a lot to your plate. There's parents, there's obviously the relationship that you have as a couple. How do you ensure that you're making sure that your mental health is where it needs to be so that you can function at a high level?
Therapy. We've been in therapy for God knows what, 10 years? and it's not always because there's a problem. We lessen the problems or we end together, and it's to ensure that we lessen the problems or we run into as least amount of problems as we can, because without it, it's us trying to figure it out on our own. And to add, he's a licensed therapist, and he tries to do therapy on me, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Honey,
You're a
sit down.
non-compliant client. It's not my skill set. It's just that you're a tough client for anybody. But and it's hard. And when you're a therapist, it's certain code of ethics. You're not supposed to like sleep with the person that you're doing therapy with. So, I kind of jacked that up. But but I would say, like she said, as a licensed therapist, one of the things they tell you when you're in school is that before you do therapy, you need to sit in the chair of a client and make sure that you receive therapy so that you understand the process and the vulnerability associated with it. But in addition to that, when I was talking about that balance, I'm run. Like at work, we created this program, the way we evaluate opportunities, right? We call it like incubation. And incubation stage, you can just think as much as you want. You can create as much as you want, and there's no limits. Janeen used to limit me in my incubation stage, right? So we were like, hey, you got to let Chris think, right? And then you have operational stage. Operational stage is when we really work through the nuts and bolts of these ideas. We try to bring them down and say, is this a real opportunity? What does this look like? Is this a win? Is this a loss? How does this look? And then if we decide to go forward, so we will say no to it at that point, or we decide to go forward. And if we decide to go forward, it's called implementation. So then we implement another idea, and then we're gonna evaluation is the last stage, right? So then we're evaluating for us to create this idea, for us to do that, what was the win and what did we lose for gaining that win? Because even when you're winning, you're losing something. To do a big event or something, we might have spent a lot of time, a lot of money. This thing, something they could have been doing micro marketing. We took our marketing team off of this thing. Something they could have been doing micro marketing on because we're doing this macro marketing. I'm sorry, where was I going with that?
We were talking about our mental health and like.
Oh yes. So I like to run. I'm in that incubation stage a lot. And where Janeen is like, Chris, I'm not signing up for another thing else right now. We're trying to get this family in order. We're trying to do that. And then she'll plan 3 vacations for us to go on. But she's like, hey, we need to slow our life down, right? So it's that yin and yang where I'm like running like, oh no, this would be a dope idea. This would be great. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, yo, you're not hearing me. No, you're really not listening. Like, yo, this is great. Come on, let's go. Why aren't you excited? Because she's like, because I see you getting burnt out. I see you getting overwhelmed. I see you getting frustrated. I see you not being here. I see, me having to do this. I see all of these other things. I see the investment. I see all of this. So let's kind of balance this out a little bit. So to help my mental health, like that yin to the yang, she's like, slow down. Let's eat what's on our plate first, and then let's think about how we want to move forward.
Clap it up for Janeen.
So before we leave, we definitely got to talk about the restaurant. So you go into the restaurant business, which is probably the hardest business to be successful in, extremely difficult. And you already have all the other stuff that you're managing. What's the inspiration for opening a restaurant?
So a part of these vacations that she picked, there in all these random places throughout the world. And so we would go across the country, all over, and get these great dining experiences, right? And then we would come back to Baltimore with energy, like, yo, let's go, let's keep this going. We just got home, let's go hit another restaurant. And then the dining experience just is what the dining scene wasn't what we were getting in other places. Now, Baltimore has a great dining experience, it's great food and everything else, but it wasn't that energy that I was like that, or Maddingdong, or Tell, or I was getting that Tao or somewhere else like that, or Maddingdong or something, right? So it wasn't this metropolitan trendy energy, right? Where music, fashion, and food connected, right? So I would just get frustrated. I'll be at restaurants, I'll be like, Janeen, look at this light fixture. They could have did this and it'd have been cooler. Listen to this playlist. If they'd have put Shaka Khan on, I guarantee you sales at the bar would go up by this percentage and everything else.
Can y'all imagine? Literally thinking you're going to dinner and this man is ripping this restaurant to shreds.
I literally went to one of the owners. I said, play this playlist and let me know if sales go up.
Just eat your truffle fries, Chris.
I said, play this playlist. Let me know if sales go up. I guarantee you he ain't played that other playlist since. It was Charles. I said, Charles. And then so I just started connecting with other restaurateurs, and I'm just like, hey, why don't you guys do it like this? How do you do it like this? What's the passion? How does this work? So just putting myself in the educational phase of meeting the people, understanding the field a little bit more before I was in there, just preparing myself for the opportunity whenever I wanted it to. And then one of my buddies called me one day and said, hey, Chris, this restaurant is going out of business. I think that we could do this. You can come and decorate it however you want. You can have the light fixture that you want and everything else. And, I'll do the food. But then the pandemic happened, and he had a few other investments restaurants that he wanted to make sure. But it was perfect because I was able to find our Chef Sayon Bryce, and have him. If y'all know Chef, y'all better make some noise for his lamb chops. Thank you. And so, we were able, the opportunity, I was ready for the opportunity. I had already talked to the people, I understood how this worked and everything else. But again, I have my partners, right? So my partner, Jada and Chris was managing partner, and who have like several years. And then you bring in Keisha and Jamil, who have like a different perspective and who are just like, have high level relationships or whatever. So we decided we were going to start this restaurant. It was just, we had prepared ourselves. So I think just putting yourselves in those runs before you're ready to be there. You don't have to feel insecure. Start learning the field, doing your research and everything else like that. And so like Janeen said, Janeen was very meticulous on the cocktail menu. We sat with Chef, we went over the food. He said this, we was like, no, we're gonna do it like this. How do we bring these two together or whatever else like this? Because Chef cooks up here. And I'm like, Chef, we have to bring the menu down here to make sure that it's palatable and that it's consumable and that people feel like they can eat there 3-4 days a week if they desire. And so we were able to create that, and then we put the right management system team in place. But I won't sell you any dreams and say, hey, we just turned it over to the management team. 3 months after that, we lost our GM. And the first night in the restaurant, me and Janeen both trying to touch tables, help with reservations. It was a madhouse because, it sold out in the first 30 minutes for 3 months. It was just a madhouse. We had to turn away the owner of the Washington Nationals. It was so bad.
Why was it so successful so early?
I think
Marketing.
It was that understanding of human behavior and marketing. Our rollout was incredible. We sent black boxes with black champagne flutes, champagne, an invitation, say you're invited to this Black Swan. We had Baltimore's who's who there. People came from out of town.
And we had, 3 grand opening events?
Yeah, we had several grand opening events. Like the anticipation was there. And we started a lot of businesses not out of trying to fill a void, right? People was asking me before, like, why do you start these businesses? It's like healthcare, we wanted to fill a void in the healthcare thing. Beauty wanted to create a void where black people, all of this. And then restaurant, and they could see technicians that look like them, and it's not all of this. And then restaurant, there was nobody providing that style of dining, right? So I think that people were just so excited to have a style of dining like this that was also sophisticated, and everybody just signed up, man, to come out. And the food is amazing.
But I don't want to make it seem like it was all unicorns and rainbows, because he drags me into the restaurant business kicking and screaming. I wanted no parts of opening a restaurant. But, as the ball got rolling, I started really like saying that there was a vision for this and it was okay and there was a need and it was going to be good. And it turned out to be amazing, but I didn't see the vision at first for that one.
It's a risk.
It was a huge risk.
My father used to own a West Side Carryout, and I saw the lows of this, man. I saw him and his partners fighting. He's making food. They're not using proper purveyors and all that other stuff. They're going to the grocery store and everything. So I've seen the ills of it, man. And honestly, we just been blessed, man. We've been blessed by the support of everybody that comes out all the time. People just advocate. People speak about Black Swan. They put us in the rums. We catered to Preakness. We were one of the caterers for the Preakness. They put us in the hospitality tents for all the very expensive tents at the finish line. That's because somebody else was in a rum and they put us in that rum verbally, right? And they advocated that. Shalonda, Robin, they was like, hey, we need more representation of like us. And so we're going to advocate and put you in that rum. So I wish it's a community, man. It's not just us.
That's incredible. So the obvious question now is, what are the growth goals for Black Swan? Are we figuring that, yes, we got Harbor East, but maybe we expand some other places?
Yeah, so again, it's outcrowd, right? So Black Swan is one concept of outcrowd. So we want to take Black Swan to DC, Atlanta, the concepts that we're opening, right? I really want to see it in LA. But then we have other concepts that we're opening, right? We're negotiating some LOIs right now to bring a concept to market by the end of the year. We have a few others. So just continue to you don't do just phenomenally great in one restaurant, right? You need to have scale pennies need to add up to make some dollars in restaurants, right? So you need to have multiple of them. But continue to use Black Swan as a vehicle. So many people come through there, and people, for some reason, they feel like if you know food and you can create an environment, you must know great business. And I'm like, that's not most restaurants. People, like most restaurants go out of business in 6 months, and we just celebrated our 2-year anniversary. So it's a blessing, but literally, thank you. It's a vehicle. Connect with people, build with people. People from Ben Crump to just Jesse Jackson was there last week. Lamar comes through. Just everybody. Anybody that's in town now, I was about to say he was going to come through tonight, but I was I can't say that.
Be careful.
But there's a like now they have a place that they can go and it feels like, hey, this is the energy, this is the vibe.
Well, Chris and Janeen, you guys are amazing. Thank you for joining us. Make some noise.
Can I say something before you close out? I want to give you guys your flowers and give you guys your roses and say thank you for you guys, right? Shout out to Raven and Tony for putting this together, first of all. Just having a vision to be like, hey, I need to connect people. We need to talk about wealth in our community in a real way. And, you know, it's so funny. We met last week at Essence where people were just sharing wealth, man. It was just so great. But what you guys are doing, our communities haven't had access to for a long time, right? Like that exposure that we were talking about. When people know that you can do something or see that someone can do something, it just becomes a lot brighter. What you guys are providing is that ambitious dream, right? But what you guys are providing is the lens for that exposure, right? You're sitting down with people who they never had access to, teaching policies and business ideas and concepts that they would have never been able to go to. One, they're not teaching them in our school systems. They're actually not teaching some of this stuff in college because a lot of this stuff is real work, real on-the-job experience that helps you navigate these things. And you guys are bringing this to people's TV screen right now, or computer screens, or telephones. And that is remarkable, man. I don't think that I hope that you understand the level of impact that you're having in our communities. And that impact you might not see today, but somebody who might have thought that something was impossible, they now have faith and have optimism because of that. So continue to and invest fast, and you'll just continue to take it to another level. Continue to do the great work that you're doing, man. Our communities need it, honestly.
Appreciate you, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Make some noise for this wonderful couple right here, man.